The paintbrush trembled in David's hand. Not because he was nervous. Not because the air conditioning in his Lekki studio had broken down again, leaving them both glistening with sweat in the Lagos heat. But because Amara was looking at him with those eyes, those deep brown eyes that had haunted his dreams for the past 3 months. And he knew that if he touched her right now, if he closed the 3 feet of space between them, everything would change. "David," she whispered, her voice breaking the silence that had stretched between them like a taut wire. "Stop pretending you don't feel this." The canvas behind him held her image, curves and shadows, light and darkness, but it was nothing compared to the real woman standing before him, wrapped only in the thin white sheet they used for draping. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, and he could see the pulse beating at her throat. "Amara, we can't," he started, but she was already moving toward him. "We can," she said, and her hand reached up to touch his face. "We've been dancing around this for months, David. I'm tired of pretending." That was the moment. The moment when 3 months of restraint, of professional boundaries, of stolen glances and accidental touches, it all came crashing down. But to understand how they got here, to this moment where everything hung in the balance, we need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to when David Okonkwo was just a struggling artist with a dream, and Amara Nwosu was just a woman looking for a way to pay her rent. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the end because what happens next will shock you. Subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our passionate stories. Sit back and enjoy. David Okonkwo woke up every morning at 5 a.m. with the same knot in his stomach. It wasn't the good kind of nervousness, the kind that came before a gallery opening or when a potential buyer showed interest in his work. This was the suffocating kind. The kind that reminded him he had exactly 43,000 naira in his bank account, and his rent was due in 2 weeks. He sat up in his 1-bedroom apartment in Yaba, looking around at the controlled chaos that was his life. Canvases lined every wall, some finished, most not. Paint tubes littered the floor. Empty containers of jollof rice from Mama Karo's bukka downstairs sat stacked by the door because he kept forgetting to throw them away. At 32 years old, David was living the artist's dream. Or the artist's nightmare, depending on how you looked at it. He'd left his job at an advertising agency 3 years ago, ignoring his mother's tears and his father's disappointment. "Painting is a hobby, not a career," his father had said, standing in the doorway of their family home in Enugu. "Come back when you're ready to be serious about life." David hadn't gone back. Instead, he'd thrown himself into his art with a desperation that bordered on obsession. He painted everything: portraits, abstracts, street scenes of Lagos life. He sold pieces here and there, mostly to expatriates and young professionals who wanted authentic African art for their trendy apartments. But it was never enough. Never consistent. His phone buzzed on the bedside table. A text from his friend and fellow artist, Kunal. "Kunal, guy, I just saw your application to the Lagos Art Festival got accepted. Oyana, you better start preparing. This could be your big break." Oh. David's heart jumped. The Lagos Art Festival was the biggest art event in West Africa. Getting accepted meant exposure, potential buyers, maybe even international attention. But it also meant he needed to create something spectacular. Something that would make people stop and stare. Something that would finally prove to his parents, and to himself, that he'd made the right choice. He texted back, "Thanks, bro. I'm thinking of doing a series. Something bold. Something different. Kunal, when you go paint?" David stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. That was the problem. He didn't know. For the past 6 months, he'd felt stuck. Uninspired. He could paint technically perfect pieces all day long, but they lacked soul. They lacked the raw emotion that turned good art into great art. David, still figuring it out. But I'm thinking, the human form. Real. Unfiltered. Kunal, you mean like nude painting? Ah, David, you want cause trouble for this Lagos? David, not trouble. Truth. Beauty. The kind of work that makes people feel something. Kunal, okayO. But you go need model Sha. And say Nigerian girls no degree pose naked just like that. David sighed. Kunal was right. That was going to be the challenge. He needed a model, someone comfortable in their own skin, someone expressive, someone who could bring the emotion he was looking for. But where was he going to find someone like that? And more importantly, how was he going to pay them when he could barely pay his own rent? He got out of bed and walked to his makeshift studio area, just the corner of his living room where the light was best. 3 unfinished canvases stared back at him accusingly. They were all portraits of strangers he'd sketched at various locations around Lagos. A woman selling oranges at the traffic light, an old man reading a newspaper at a bus stop, a child playing football in the street. They were good, technically proficient, but they didn't sing. They didn't make you feel anything. David picked up a brush and stared at the blank canvas in front of him. He closed his eyes and tried to visualize what he wanted to create. But all he saw was emptiness. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Is this David Okonkwo? The artist. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Yes, this is he. My name is Sandra Akoli. I run the Artemis Gallery in Victoria Island. I saw your work at a group exhibition last year, and I'd like to discuss the possibility of featuring you in a solo show. David's heart nearly stopped. The Artemis Gallery was one of the most prestigious galleries in Lagos. Getting a solo show there could change everything. Yes. Yes, absolutely. When would you like to meet? How about tomorrow? Say 2 p.m. at my gallery. Perfect. I'll be there. Wonderful. And David, bring your best work. I have high standards. She hung up before he could respond. David stood there, phone still pressed to his ear, his mind racing. This was it. This was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. But panic quickly followed the excitement. His best work. He didn't have best work. He had good work. Adequate work. Work that paid the bills on the rare occasions when it sold. But not his best work. Because he hadn't created it yet. He needed to change that. Fast. Amara Nwosu was not having a good day. Actually, she hadn't had a good day in approximately 6 months. Ever since the fashion company she worked for went bankrupt and laid off half their staff, including her. She sat in the waiting room of yet another company, clutching her leather portfolio and trying to look confident despite the fact that her stomach was growling loud enough for the receptionist to hear. She'd skipped breakfast to save money, and lunch wasn't looking likely either. Miss Nwosu? A stern-looking woman in a power suit appeared at the door. Mr. Adelik will see you now. Amara stood, smoothing down her pencil skirt and putting on her best professional smile. This was her 3rd interview this week. She'd nailed the first 2, or so she thought, but both companies had gone with someone with more experience, which was code for someone willing to work for less money, or someone who knew someone who knew someone. That was how things worked in Lagos. The interview lasted exactly 12 minutes. 12 painful minutes where Mr. Adelik barely looked at her portfolio, asked her 3 questions about her experience, and then gave her the same speech she'd heard twice before. You're very qualified, Miss Nwosu. Very impressive. But we're looking for someone who can start immediately, and you mentioned you'd need time to relocate. I wouldn't need to relocate, sir. I live in Lagos. Yes, but you live in Surulere, correct? That's quite far from our office in Lekki. We need someone who can stay late when necessary, come in early. You understand. Amara understood perfectly. She wasn't going to get this job. Thank you for your time, sir, she said, standing and extending her hand. He shook it limply. We'll be in touch. No, they wouldn't. Amara walked out of the building and into the chaos of Lagos afternoon traffic. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the humidity made her blouse stick to her back. She checked her phone. 2 missed calls from her landlord. Her rent was 3 weeks overdue. She had 12,000 naira in her account, barely enough for food for the next week, let alone rent. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Chisholm. Chisholm, babe, how did the interview go? Amara, same as the others. Don't want to talk about it. Chisholm, sorry, hun. Listen, I might have something for you. My cousin's friend is an artist, and he's looking for a model for some project. It pays. Not much, but it's something. Amara, what kind of modeling? Chisholm, I think art stuff. Like posing for paintings. You interested? Amara hesitated. She'd done some modeling in university, fashion shows, catalog shoots, nothing major. But this sounded different. Art modeling usually meant, she swallowed hard. It usually meant nude modeling. But then she thought about her landlord's increasingly angry calls. The empty fridge in her apartment. The electricity bill she couldn't pay. Amara, how much does it pay? Chisholm, let me ask. Hold on. Amara stood on the side of the road, watching Lagos rush past her. Danfos packed with passengers, Okadas weaving through traffic, street vendors selling everything from phone chargers to roasted plantain. This city could be beautiful and brutal in the same breath. Her phone buzzed again. Chisholm. He says 15K per session, and he needs someone for at least 10 sessions over the next 3 months. That's 150K total. Plus, he's willing to pay half up front if you commit. 75,000 naira up front. That would cover her rent and give her breathing room to keep looking for a real job. Amara, does it involve nudity? Chisholm, he says it's artistic nude work. Very professional. He's a serious artist, not some creep. I can send you his Instagram so you can check out his work first. A moment later, a link appeared. Amara clicked it and found herself scrolling through David Okonkwo's Instagram page. His work was beautiful, powerful. Portraits that seemed to capture the very soul of Lagos, its energy, its pain, its hope. There were a few figure studies, tastefully done, showing the human form in ways that emphasized strength and vulnerability rather than sexuality. She took a deep breath. She'd worked so hard to maintain her dignity through these months of unemployment. She'd refused handouts from her family, hadn't asked her younger siblings for money, even though they'd offered. She'd kept her head up, kept applying, kept trying. But dignity didn't pay rent. Amara, okay. Send me his contact. I'll talk to him. Chisholm, you sure? You don't have to do this if you're uncomfortable. Amara, I'm sure. Besides, it's just art, right? Nothing to be ashamed of. But even as she typed the words, Amara felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. This was so far outside her comfort zone. She'd spent her entire life being the good girl. The responsible one, the one who followed the rules, the one who never did anything scandalous or shocking. And now she was about to pose nude for a complete stranger. What would her mother say? Her father would probably have a heart attack. But they didn't need to know. Nobody needed to know. This would just be a temporary thing, a way to make money until she found a real job. Then she could forget it ever happened. Her phone buzzed with a new message. A phone number and a name, David Okonkwo. Amara stared at it for a long moment. Then, before she could change her mind, she pressed the call button. It rang twice before a man's voice answered. Hello. Hi, my name is Amara Nwosu. I got your number from Chisholm. She said you're looking for a model. There was a brief pause. Then, yes. Yes, I am. Thank you for calling. Can we meet to discuss the details? Maybe tomorrow? His voice was nice. Warm. Not creepy or aggressive like she'd feared. Tomorrow works. Where and when? There's a cafe in Yaba, near the university. Cafe Neo. Do you know it? Yes, I know it. Great. How about 11 a.m.? That's perfect. Excellent. And Amara? Yes. Thank you. Really. I know this kind of work can be. Well, it requires courage. I appreciate you being open to it. Something about the way he said it, the genuine gratitude in his voice, made Amara relax slightly. See you tomorrow, David. See you tomorrow. She hung up and stood there for a moment, processing what she'd just agreed to. Tomorrow, she would meet this artist, this stranger. And if things went well, she would become his model, his muse. The thought sent a strange thrill through her, part anxiety, part excitement, part something she couldn't quite name. Amara shook her head and started walking toward the bus stop. She had 24 hours to prepare herself mentally for what she was about to do. 24 hours to convince herself this was just business. Just art. Nothing more. She had no idea how wrong she was. David arrived early. He always arrived early to important meetings, a habit his mother had drilled into him since childhood. If you're on time, you're late, she used to say. So he sat at a corner table in Cafe Neo, nursing an Americano and watching the door with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He'd spent the entire night researching figure drawing techniques, looking at the work of masters like Lucian Freud and Jenny Saville, trying to articulate exactly what he wanted to achieve with this project. The Lagos Art Festival was 3 months away. 3 months to create a series of paintings that would define his career. No pressure. His phone showed 11:10 a.m. She was late, but only by 10 minutes. Lagos traffic could make anyone late. David used the time to study his surroundings, a habit from his years of observational drawing. The cafe was full of the usual Yaba crowd. University students working on laptops, young entrepreneurs having animated discussions about startups, a few couples on what looked like first dates. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the faint scent of puff-puff from the kitchen. Then the door opened, and David's breath caught. She was beautiful, but not in the obvious way. Not in the Instagram-perfect, heavily made-up way that was so common in Lagos. Amara Nwosu walked into the cafe with the kind of natural grace that couldn't be taught, shoulders back, head high, despite the nervous energy David could sense radiating from her. She wore a simple blue dress that fell to her knees, her natural hair pulled back in a low bun. No excessive jewelry, just small gold earrings. But it was her face that captivated him. Expressive eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, full lips pressed together in concentration as she scanned the room, high cheekbones that caught the light from the cafe windows. David stood and raised his hand. Amara? Her eyes found him, and she smiled. A small, nervous smile that somehow made her even more appealing. She walked over, and David noticed she moved with the unconscious elegance of someone who'd done some kind of physical training. Dance, maybe? Or modeling? David. She extended her hand. Yes. Thank you for coming. Please sit. He gestured to the chair across from him. Can I get you something? Coffee. Tea. Coffee, please. Black, no sugar. He liked that. No pretense, no fuss. He flagged down a waiter and ordered another Americano. For a moment, they just looked at each other, and David felt that familiar artist's itch, the need to memorize every detail, every shadow, every line. Her face was a study in contrasts, soft curves and sharp angles, strength and vulnerability. So, Amara said, breaking the silence. Chisholm told me you're working on a project for an art festival? Yes, the Lagos Art Festival. It's in 3 months, and I've been accepted to showcase a series of pieces. I want to do something different. Something that captures the essence of. He paused, searching for the right words. I want to paint the human experience. Not just bodies, but emotion. Truth. The things we hide and the things we can't help but show. Amara's coffee arrived, and she wrapped both hands around the cup, as if seeking its warmth despite the Lagos heat. And you need a model for this. Yes. I need someone who can bring more than just physical presence. I need someone who can emote, who's not afraid to be vulnerable on canvas. And it involves nudity. She said it matter-of-factly, but David caught the slight tension in her jaw. Yes, he said honestly. But I want to be very clear about what this is and what it isn't. This is art, Amara. Professional, respectful art. We'll have sessions at my studio, which is private. You'll be in complete control. If you're ever uncomfortable, we stop. No questions asked. And everything we create stays between us until the exhibition, where your identity will be protected if you wish. She studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face. Why me? You don't even know me. How do you know I can do what you're looking for? Honestly, I don't. But Chisholm said you have modeling experience, and when I saw your photo, he pulled out his phone and showed her the picture Chisholm had sent, a casual shot of Amara at what looked like a birthday party, laughing at something off camera. There's something in your eyes. Something real. That's what I need. Amara looked at the photo, then back at him. I've never done this kind of modeling before. Fashion shoots, yes. Catalog work. But nothing like this. I know, and I understand if it's too much. But I promise you, I'll make this as comfortable as possible. We'll start slow. Maybe the first session is just clothed poses, getting used to working together. Then we can progress from there, at whatever pace you're comfortable with. She bit her lip, considering. David found himself holding his breath. Chisholm said you're paying $15,000 per session. Yes, and I'm willing to pay half the total up front, $75,000. If you commit to at least 10 sessions over the next 3 months. He saw something flicker in her eyes. Relief? Desperation? Both. Can I ask you something? Amara said. Of course. Why did you become an artist? What made you choose this life? The question caught David off guard. He'd expected practical questions, about scheduling, about payment, about the specifics of what he wanted her to do. Not this. Because, he said slowly, it's the only thing that's ever made sense to me. When I paint, I'm having a conversation with the world. Asking questions. Trying to understand what it means to be human, to be alive, to feel everything we feel. It's not about making money or being famous, though I wouldn't mind those things, he added with a slight smile. It's about creating something true. Amara nodded slowly. I like that. Truth. In a city like Lagos, where everyone is pretending to be something they're not, truth feels radical. Exactly. David leaned forward, excited now. That's exactly what I want to capture. The truth beneath the surface. The Lagos nobody shows on Instagram. The real people, the real emotions, the real struggles and joys. And you think you can do that by painting me naked? The bluntness of the question made David laugh. When you put it that way, it sounds ridiculous. But yes, I think when we strip away the clothes, the armor we wear every day, we strip away the pretense too. We're left with just ourselves. Vulnerable. Real. Amara took a sip of her coffee, her eyes never leaving his face. David had the distinct impression he was being evaluated, measured against some internal criteria she had. Finally, she spoke. Okay, I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. First, nobody can know about this. Not my family, not my friends, except Chisholm, who already knows. I have a reputation to protect, and Lagos people can be judgmental. Agreed. Your identity will be completely protected. Second, if I say stop at any point, we stop. No arguments, no pressure. Absolutely. Third, I want the payment terms in writing. A proper contract. I'll have one drawn up by tomorrow. And fourth, she paused, and David saw vulnerability flash across her face for the first time. I need you to understand that I'm doing this because I need the money. I'm not some free spirit who's comfortable with nudity or thinks this is empowering or whatever. I'm unemployed, my rent is overdue, and I'm desperate. So please don't romanticize this or make it into something it's not. Her honesty was like a punch to the gut. David felt a wave of respect for this woman who could state her situation so plainly, without shame or apology. I understand, he said quietly. And I promise, I won't make you feel like an object or a commodity. You're a person first. A collaborator. We're creating something together. Amara nodded, then extended her hand across the table. Deal. David shook her hand, and the moment their skin touched, he felt it, a spark of something he couldn't quite define. Energy? Connection? Whatever it was, it made his heart beat a little faster. He released her hand quickly, trying to maintain his professional composure. When do we start? Amara asked. How about this weekend? Saturday afternoon? That gives me time to prepare the studio and get the contract ready. Saturday works. What should I bring? Just yourself. And maybe comfortable clothing for the first session. We'll start clothed, like I said. Let you get used to the space, to me, to the whole process. Okay. Amara stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Text me your address and the time. I will. And Amara? She paused, looking back at him. Thank you for trusting me with this. She gave him a small smile, the first genuine one he'd seen from her. Don't make me regret it, David Okonkwo. Then she was gone, disappearing into the Lagos afternoon, and David sat back down with his now cold coffee. He pulled out his sketchbook and started drawing from memory. The curve of her jaw, the way she held herself, the intelligence in her eyes. His hand moved quickly, confidently, in a way it hadn't for months. For the first time in a long time, David felt inspired. He had no idea that this inspiration would become something much more complicated. Something that would challenge everything he thought he knew about art, about boundaries, about himself. But for now, all he knew was that he'd found his muse. And his muse had agreed to let him paint her. Everything else would come later. Amara stood outside the faded yellow building in Yaba, double-checking the address David had sent her. This was it. 4th floor, apartment 4B. She'd almost canceled 3 times. The first time was Thursday night, when she'd lain awake at 2 a.m., replaying the cafe conversation in her mind and wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The second time was Friday morning, when her mother had called and asked how the job search was going, and Amara had felt the weight of the lie she was about to live. The third time was an hour ago, standing in front of her mirror, looking at her reflection and asking herself, "Can you really do this?" But then she'd thought about her landlord's latest text message. Final warning. Pay by Monday or I'm changing the locks. So here she was. Amara climbed the 4 flights of stairs, her heart pounding. The whether from the physical exertion or anxiety, she couldn't tell. The building was old but clean, with painted walls and potted plants on some of the landings. She could smell someone cooking egusi soup, and the sound of Afrobeats drifted from one of the apartments. She reached 4B and knocked. The door opened immediately, as if David had been waiting right behind it. Amara. Hi. Come in. He stepped aside, and she walked into his world. The apartment was small but filled with light. Large windows along one wall looked out over the chaotic streets of Yaba below. But it was the art that dominated the space, canvases everywhere, in various stages of completion. Paintings leaning against walls, sketches pinned to boards, brushes soaking in jars of murky water. The smell of paint and turpentine mixed with incense, something woody and calming. In the corner, he'd set up what was clearly his workspace. An easel facing a small raised platform draped with white cloth, a chair, various props and fabrics scattered around. "Sorry about the mess," David said, closing the door behind her. "I know it looks chaotic, but I promise there's a method to the madness." Amara searched for the right word. "It's alive. It feels like a real artist's space." David smiled. A genuine smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger than his 32 years. He wore a paint-stained t-shirt and jeans, his locks pulled back in a ponytail. "Can I get you something to drink? Water? Juice?" Water would be great. He disappeared into what she assumed was the kitchen, and Amara took the opportunity to look around more carefully. She walked slowly along the walls, studying his paintings. They were good, really good. A portrait of an old woman, her face a map of wrinkles and wisdom. A street scene capturing the golden hour light on Lagos traffic. An abstract piece that somehow conveyed the feeling of rain. "That's my grandmother," David said, returning with a bottle of water. He'd followed her gaze to the old woman's portrait. "I painted it the week before she died. She said it captured her soul." "It's beautiful," Amara said softly. "You can see the love in every brushstroke." David looked at her with surprise. That's exactly what my mother said when she saw it." They stood there for a moment, looking at the painting, and Amara felt some of her anxiety begin to ease. This was an artist's studio, yes. But it was also someone's home. Someone's sanctuary. And David, despite being a stranger, didn't feel threatening. He felt safe. "So," David said, setting down his own water bottle. "Before we start, I want to go over everything again. Make sure you're completely comfortable." "Okay, today we're just going to do clothed poses. I want you to get used to being in this space, to holding poses, to working with me. I'll do some basic sketches, nothing elaborate. Think of it as a warm-up session." "That sounds good. And here," he walked to a small table and picked up a few sheets of paper. "The contract, as promised. Take your time reading it. If there's anything you want to change, we can discuss it." Amara took the papers and sat down on the worn couch to read. The contract was straightforward. 10 sessions over 3 months, 15,000 naira per session, half paid up front. It specified that all work would be professional in nature, that she could stop at any time, and that her identity would be protected in any exhibitions or publications unless she gave explicit written consent. At the bottom was a space for both their signatures. "This looks fair," she said. "Good. And this," David handed her an envelope. 75,000 naira as agreed. Amara opened the envelope and counted. He'd given her the full amount in crisp bills. Money that would save her from eviction, that would buy food, that would give her breathing room to keep looking for a real job. She felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them away quickly. "Thank you. You're doing me the favor," David said gently. "I know this isn't easy for you." Amara signed the contract with a pen he provided, and David signed after her. Just like that, it was official. She was an artist's model now. "Okay," David said, clapping his hands together. "Let's start. Go ahead and stand on the platform. You can keep your dress on for now. We'll try a few simple standing poses first." Amara stepped onto the raised platform, suddenly very aware of her body, her posture, every movement. She stood there awkwardly, arms at her sides. "Relax," David said, moving to his easel. "You look like you're at attention. Just stand naturally. Shift your weight to one foot, maybe. Let your shoulders drop." She tried to follow his instructions, but everything felt forced. David put down his charcoal. "Okay, let's try something different. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from?" "Owerri," Amara said, grateful for the distraction. "But I've lived in Lagos for 8 years now." "What brought you here?" "University. I studied business administration at Unilag. And after university, I worked at a fashion company, marketing and brand management, until they went bankrupt 6 months ago." The bitterness in her voice surprised her. "I'm sorry," David said, and he sounded like he meant it. "That must have been difficult." It is. Lagos is expensive, and finding a job is like..." She gestured vaguely. "It's like trying to catch water with a basket." David laughed. "That's a good metaphor. Mind if I use it someday?" Despite herself, Amara smiled. "Be my guest." "What did you love about the fashion industry?" Amara thought about it, surprised to realize she was relaxing, her body finding a more natural posture. "I loved the creativity of it. The way fabric and color and design could transform how someone felt about themselves. Fashion is art you can wear." "That's beautiful," David said, and she realized he'd been sketching while she talked, his hand moving quickly. "Keep talking." Tell me about your family. So she did. She told him about her parents in Owerri, her father a retired civil servant, her mother a teacher. About her two younger siblings, a brother studying engineering and a sister who wanted to be a doctor. About how she was supposed to be the success story. The words poured out, and as she talked, she forgot to be self-conscious. She just existed. That's perfect, David said softly. Stay just like that. Amara realized she'd been gesturing as she spoke, one hand slightly raised, her head tilted, her expression animated. She held the pose. For several minutes, there was only the sound of charcoal on paper and peaceful silence between them. Finally, David stepped back. Okay, you can relax. Amara dropped the pose. How does it look? Come see. She walked to the easel. The sketch took her breath away. It was her, but somehow more. David had captured not just her features, but something essential. The emotion in her face, the vulnerability in her posture, the story in her eyes. She looked strong and fragile at the same time. Is that really how you see me? She whispered. It's how you are, David said. You just don't always let people see it. Amara stared at the sketch, feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with clothing. Can we try another pose? She asked. Sure. Sit on the chair this time. Get comfortable. She sat, and this time she didn't need instructions. She let her body find its own position. One leg tucked under her, one arm draped over the chair back, her head turned to look out the window. Perfect, David breathed. And they worked. For the next 2 hours, they cycled through different poses. David sketched continuously, occasionally asking her to adjust. They talked between poses. David told her about his family in Enugu, his father's disappointment, the loneliness of pursuing art in a city that often didn't value it. Why did you leave the advertising job? Amara asked during a break. David looked thoughtful. Because I was dying there. Slowly. Every campaign was someone else's vision. I'd come home and have nothing left to give my own canvases because I'd spent all my creativity making other people rich. So you chose poverty over compromise? He laughed. When you put it that way, it sounds stupid. No, Amara said quickly. It sounds brave. I wish I had that kind of courage. You do, David said, meeting her eyes. You're here, aren't you? You're doing something most people wouldn't dare to do. That takes courage. Amara felt something warm spread through her chest. When was the last time someone had called her brave? One more pose. David asked. Then we'll call it a day. Sure. This time, I want you to close your eyes. Just stand on the platform, let your arms hang at your sides, and close your eyes. Think about something that makes you happy. Amara stepped onto the platform and closed her eyes. She thought about Sunday mornings in Owerri, when her mother would make akara and pap, and the whole family would sit together before church. She thought about her sister's laugh, her brother's terrible jokes, her father's quiet pride. She felt her face soften, a small smile touching her lips. Beautiful, David whispered. When she opened her eyes, he was staring at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Not creepy. Not predatory, but the way an artist looks at something that moves them. I think we're done for today, he said, his voice slightly rough. Amara stepped down, suddenly aware of how much time had passed. The light outside had changed. Same time next week? She asked, gathering her bag. Yes. And Amara? She turned at the door. Thank you. Today was exactly what I needed. You're going to be incredible for this project. She smiled. You're welcome. See you next Saturday. As she walked back into Lagos, Amara felt different. Lighter. For a few hours, she'd forgotten to feel sorry for herself, forgotten to feel ashamed. For a few hours, she'd just been Amara. And someone had looked at her and seen something worth capturing. It was addictive. The second session started the same, clothed poses, easy conversation, David sketching while Amara relaxed. But something had shifted. The initial awkwardness was gone, replaced by comfortable rhythm. Amara found herself looking forward to their sessions. I've been thinking, David said during a break, about your situation. The job search. Please don't offer me charity, Amara said quickly. I'm not, but I know someone at a marketing agency who might be hiring. Would you be okay if I passed along your information? Amara felt tears prick her eyes. You'd do that? Of course. Just because you're modeling for me doesn't mean I don't want you to succeed in other areas of your life. Amara, David said gently, you're allowed to accept help. It doesn't make you weak. The words hung in the air between them. Okay, David said, breaking the moment. I think today we should try something different. semi-draped poses. Amara's heart jumped. Meaning you'd be partially covered, draped fabric across your torso, but arms and shoulders bare. We'd work up to full nude over the next few sessions. Only if you're comfortable. Amara took a deep breath. This was what she'd agreed to. Okay, she said. David handed her a length of white fabric. You can change behind that screen. Just drape it however feels comfortable. Remember, you're in control. Amara went behind the screen and stared at the fabric. Her hands trembled slightly as she unbuttoned her dress. This was fine. This was art. This was professional. She wrapped the fabric around her chest and under her arms, securing it. When she stepped out, she kept her eyes on the floor. Amara, David said softly. Look at me. She raised her eyes. You're beautiful. There's nothing to be ashamed of. This is art. And I promise you, I will never make you feel like it's anything else. She nodded, feeling some tension leave her shoulders. Good. Now let's try a seated pose on the platform. Get comfortable. The session continued, and gradually, Amara forgot about the exposed skin. She focused on David's instructions, on the conversation that flowed between them. David told her about the Lagos Art Festival, his hopes and fears. Amara told him about her dreams of starting her own fashion line, about sketches she kept in a notebook at home, about the business she'd been too afraid to launch. Why afraid? David asked, charcoal moving across paper. Because what if I fail? What if I put everything into it and it doesn't work? And what if it does work? What if you're denying the world something beautiful because you're afraid? Amara had no answer for that. By the third session, they'd fallen into a comfortable routine. Amara would arrive at 2 p.m., they'd talk, then work for 3 to 4 hours with breaks. David had been true to his word. He'd connected Amara with his friend, and she had an interview scheduled. Things were looking up. These are good, David said during session 4, gesturing to his sketches. They're technically proficient, but they're not alive. They don't have the emotion I need for the festival. What are you missing? David ran his hand over his face. Truth. Raw emotion. These feel too posed, too careful. I need to capture something real. What do you want me to do differently? He looked at her for a long moment. I need you to trust me. Completely. Can you do that? Something in his tone made Amara's pulse quicken. What do you have in mind? Today, I want to try full figure work. No draping. Just you. There it was. The moment she'd known was coming, but had been pushing to the back of her mind. Okay, she heard herself say. Are you sure? We can wait if you're not ready. No. Let's do it. Otherwise, I'll just keep being afraid. David nodded. Take your time. Change behind the screen. And Amara? You can back out at any moment. No judgment. Amara went behind the screen and stood there for a moment, her hand on the zipper of her dress. This was it. Once she did this, there was no going back. But she'd come this far. And strange as it seemed, she trusted David. He'd been nothing but professional, nothing but kind. He'd seen her at her most vulnerable emotionally. Why not physically too? She unzipped her dress and let it fall to the floor. Then her undergarments. She stood there naked behind the screen, her heart pounding so hard she was sure David could hear it. There's a silk robe hanging behind the screen, David called out. You can wear it while you walk to the platform if that makes you more comfortable. Amara grabbed the robe gratefully and wrapped it around herself. She took a deep breath and stepped out. David was at his easel, adjusting the canvas. He looked up and smiled, a kind, reassuring smile that held no judgment, no lust. Just professional appreciation. Thank you, he said simply. Amara walked to the platform, her legs shaking slightly. She stood there in the robe, not sure what to do next. Whenever you're ready, David said gently. Take off the robe and find a position that feels natural. Don't think about being sexy or provocative. Just be you. Amara closed her eyes, took a breath, and let the robe fall. The air in the studio felt cool against her skin. She felt exposed, vulnerable, terrified. But then she opened her eyes and looked at David, and he was looking at her the way he always looked at her, with the focus of an artist studying his subject. Not with desire, not with judgment, just with concentrated observation. Beautiful, he said quietly. Now turn slightly to the left. Yes, like that. And maybe lift your chin a bit. Perfect. And just like that, Amara was working. Posing. Holding still while David sketched. The first few minutes were agony. Every breath felt magnified. Every small movement seemed huge. But gradually, as David worked and they fell into their usual rhythm of conversation, Amara began to relax. "Tell me about the first time you knew you wanted to be an artist," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. David smiled, not looking up from his work. "I was 7 years old. My grandmother was visiting, and I watched my mother wash and braid her hair. The light was coming through the window in this particular way, and I saw beauty in something so simple, so everyday. I ran and got paper and crayons and tried to capture it. The drawing was terrible. I was 7, but the feeling of trying to hold on to that moment, to make it permanent, that's when I knew." "Do you still have the drawing?" "My mother kept it. It's in a box somewhere in Enugu." They talked about childhood memories, about Lagos, about dreams and disappointments. And somewhere in the middle of the conversation, Amara forgot she was naked. She forgot to be self-conscious. She just existed. When David finally said, "Okay, we can stop for today," Amara was almost disappointed. She put the robe back on and went behind the screen to dress. When she emerged, David had stepped away from the easel, and there was something like wonder on his face. "Can I see?" Amara asked. David hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but remember, this is just the preliminary sketch. The actual painting will take time." Amara walked to the easel and looked at what David had created. She gasped. It wasn't just a sketch of her body. It was a story told in charcoal and shadow. He'd captured something she didn't even know she projected. A mixture of strength and fragility, defiance and surrender, fear and courage. She looked beautiful. Not in a conventional way, but in a real way. A human way. "David," she whispered. This is what I've been searching for," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is truth. Thank you, Amara. Thank you for trusting me." She looked at him, this man who had somehow seen past all her defenses and captured her essence on paper, and felt something shift in her chest. This was dangerous territory. She knew it even as the feeling washed over her. "Same time next week?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," David said, and his eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Same time next week." As Amara left the studio that day, she knew something had changed. This wasn't just about money anymore. This wasn't just about art. This was about connection. About being seen. About two people who were supposed to be artist and model, but were becoming something else entirely. Something neither of them had planned for. Something that could either create something beautiful or destroy them both. Amara got the job. David's friend at the marketing agency had been impressed with her experience and portfolio, and they'd offered her a position starting next month. It was slightly less than what she'd made before, but it was steady income. Security. A future. She should have been ecstatic. Instead, she felt conflicted. "That's wonderful news," David said when she told him at their next session. But even as he smiled, Amara thought she saw something flicker across his face. Disappointment? Sadness? "It is," Amara agreed. "Thanks to you. You saved my life, David. You saved your own life. I just made a phone call." They looked at each other for a long moment, and Amara felt that familiar tension. The one that had been building between them for weeks now, unspoken but undeniable. "Should we get started?" David asked, breaking the moment. "Yes, of course." But something was different today. The ease between them felt strained. The comfortable silence felt heavy. Amara took her usual position on the platform, letting the robe fall away. But instead of immediately beginning to sketch, David just stood there, looking at her. "David," she asked softly. "I'm going to miss this," he said quietly. "Miss what?" "We still have 3 more sessions. The festival is in 6 weeks." "I know. But once you start your new job, once you're back in the real world, this will just be a strange interlude in your life. Something you did when you were desperate and needed money." His words stung because they were partially true. Wasn't that how she'd initially thought of this? A temporary thing, a means to an end, something to forget once her real life resumed? But somewhere along the way, it had become more than that. "Is that what you think?" Amara asked. "That I'm just here for the money? Isn't that why you started?" "Yes," she admitted. "But that's not why I've kept coming back." David's head snapped up. "Then why?" Amara took a breath. They were entering dangerous territory, but she was tired of pretending. Tired of hiding what she felt every time she was in this studio. Every time David looked at her with those intense artist's eyes. Every time they talked for hours, and she felt more connected to this man than she'd felt to anyone in years. "Because being here makes me feel alive," she said. "Because you see me, really see me, in a way nobody else does. Because these sessions are the best part of my week, and I find myself counting down the days until Saturday at 2 p.m. The silence that followed was deafening. David set down his charcoal. Amara, I know, she said quickly. I know this is supposed to be professional. I know you're the artist and I'm the model, and there are boundaries we're not supposed to cross. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel. What do you feel? David's voice was rough, strained. You know what I feel. Don't make me say it. David crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. He stood at the edge of the platform, looking up at her, and the expression on his face was anguished. Amara, we can't. I promised you this would be professional. I promised you'd be safe with me. I am safe with you. That's why I can say this. But if we cross this line, everything changes. The art, the project, us. Everything becomes complicated. Isn't it already complicated? Amara asked. She stepped down from the platform, forgetting she wore only the silk robe. Haven't you felt it too? This thing between us. Of course I have, David said, and there was pain in his voice. From the very first day, when you walked into Cafe Neo. I've been fighting it for 6 weeks, telling myself it's just the intimacy of the work, just the intensity of creating together. But it's not. It's you, Amara. You've gotten under my skin, into my head, into my... He stopped himself, but Amara knew what he'd been about to say. Into my heart. Then why are we fighting it? She whispered. Because I'm 32 years old and barely making rent. Because you're about to start a real job with a real future. Because you deserve better than a struggling artist who can't even afford to take you to a proper restaurant. Who says I want a proper restaurant? Who says I care about any of that? Amara. Stop, she said, placing her hand on his chest. She could feel his heart beating frantically beneath her palm. Stop finding reasons why this can't work and tell me the truth. Do you want me? David's eyes closed, and for a moment, Amara thought he would pull away. Thought he would retreat behind his professional boundaries and pretend this conversation never happened. But then his eyes opened, and the raw desire in them made her knees weak. I want you so much it hurts, he said roughly. I want you so much I can barely focus on painting because I'm too busy memorizing every detail of you. The way you bite your lip when you're thinking. The way you laugh at my terrible jokes. The way you hold yourself, like you're ready to fight the world, but also desperately hoping someone will see how tired you are of fighting. His hand came up to cup her face, and Amara leaned into the touch like a flower turning toward the sun. I want you, David continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. But I also respect you too much to take advantage of this situation. You came here out of desperation, Amara. I paid you to be here. How can anything that starts from that foundation be real? It's real because I choose it, Amara said fiercely. Not because you're paying me. Not because I need the money. I have the job now, remember? It's real because I choose you. Because somewhere between the first session and now, you stopped being just the artist and became someone I can't stop thinking about. Amara. David's thumb traced her cheekbone, and she felt herself trembling. Kiss me, she whispered. Please. Just once. So I know I'm not imagining this. For one eternal moment, David just looked at her, his internal struggle playing out on his face. Then, with a groan that sounded like surrender and triumph all at once, he closed the distance between them. The kiss was everything Amara had imagined and nothing like she'd expected. It was gentle at first, tentative, almost questioning. But when Amara pressed closer, her hands fisting in his shirt, it deepened into something desperate and hungry. David's hands tangled in her hair, and Amara felt the silk robe slip from one shoulder. She didn't care. All she cared about was this moment, this connection, this overwhelming feeling of rightness. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, David rested his forehead against hers. We're making a mistake, he said, but his arms tightened around her waist. Then it's my mistake to make, Amara replied. They stood there in the studio, wrapped in each other's arms as the Lagos afternoon light shifted and changed around them, and Amara knew there was no going back. Whatever happened next, they had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And God helped them both, she didn't regret it. The kiss changed everything and nothing. They still had their sessions. David still painted, and Amara still posed. But now there was a new dimension to their time together, stolen moments between poses, lingering touches that had nothing to do with art, conversations that stretched into the evening until the studio grew dark and they had to turn on lamps. They didn't sleep together. Not yet. David insisted they take things slow, that they figure out what this was between them before letting physical desire completely take over. "I want to do this right," he said one evening as they sat on his worn couch, Amara's head on his shoulder. "I don't want you to ever look back and feel like I used you or took advantage of you." "You could never," Amara assured him. But she appreciated his restraint, even as her body ached for more. She started her new job, and suddenly her life had structure again. Mornings at the office, evenings at home, weekends split between family obligations and time with David. On the surface, everything looked normal. But underneath, Amara was falling in love. It happened gradually and then all at once. In the way David remembered she liked her coffee black with no sugar. In the way he listened to her talk about her day, genuinely interested in even the mundane details. In the way he pushed her to pursue her dream of starting her own fashion line, even helping her sketch out business plans during their breaks. "You're brilliant," he told her one Saturday afternoon. They'd finished their session early, and now they were sprawled on the floor of his studio, surrounded by her fashion sketches. "These designs are incredible. Why are you wasting your time in corporate marketing when you could be creating this?" "Because I need to eat," Amara said with a laugh. "Unlike some people, I can't survive on passion and paint fumes alone." "You're right," David agreed, pulling her close. "But promise me you won't give up on this dream. Promise me that once you've saved some money, you'll take the leap. Only if you promise to finally show your parents your work. Stop hiding from them." David's expression darkened. "That's different." "How?" "They'll never understand. They'll never accept that this is a legitimate career." "Then make them understand. Show them what you've created. Show them the festival exhibition. Let them see what I see, an incredible artist who's too afraid of rejection to claim his success." David was quiet for a long moment. Then, "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You were just too busy staring at my naked body to notice." David laughed and kissed her, and the conversation shifted to other things. But Amara had planted a seed, and she could see it taking root in David's mind. Amara arrived at the studio with storm clouds in her eyes. David noticed immediately. He'd learned to read her moods, the set of her shoulders, the tightness around her mouth, the way she moved through space when something was weighing on her. "What happened?" he asked, setting down the canvas he'd been preparing. "Nothing. Everything. I don't want to talk about it." She dropped her bag with more force than necessary. "Let's just work." "Amara." "I said I don't want to talk about it, David." Her voice was sharp, brittle. "Isn't that what you wanted anyway? Raw emotion? Well, here I am. Raw and emotional and angry at the whole damn world." David studied her carefully. In 7 weeks, he'd never seen her like this, not just vulnerable or nervous, but actually furious. And underneath the fury, something else. Hurt. Deep, bone-crushing hurt. "Tell me," he said softly. "Why? So you can paint it? Turn my pain into your art." The words came out bitter, and Amara immediately regretted them. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "Yes, you did. And maybe you're right. Maybe that's exactly what I've been doing." David moved closer, his voice gentle but firm. "But before I was your artist, I was your friend. So tell me, please." Amara felt something inside her crack. She sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "My mother called this morning. My father, he's been asking about me, wanting to know when I'm coming home to visit. And I lied to her, David. I told him I was too busy with my new job. Because I'm ashamed to tell her the truth, that her daughter posed nude for money. That she's a disgrace to the family." Her voice broke on the last word. "And the worst part of me agrees with it. Part of me thinks it's right to be ashamed. That I should be ashamed. That everything we've done here is just me selling myself because I was too weak to find another way." "Stop." David knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Don't do that. Don't let their shame become yours. But maybe they're right. Maybe this whole thing is just me justifying something shameful by calling it art. Is that what you really think?" David's eyes searched hers. "When you look at those sketches, when you see yourself captured on canvas, do you see shame? Or do you see truth?" Amara was quiet for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. "I see me," she whispered. "The real me. The me I've been hiding from everyone, including myself." "Exactly. And that's not shameful, Amara. That's brave. That's powerful. That's everything this project was meant to be." She looked at him, this man who had somehow become her anchor in a sea of judgment and doubt. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't. I'm just as terrified as you are." David reached up to wipe away her tears with his thumb. Every day, I wake up wondering if this is the day you'll realize you deserve better than a struggling artist with more passion than sense. The day you'll see me the way my father sees me, as a failure playing at success. You're not a failure, and you're not a disgrace. So can we agree to stop listening to the voices that tell us we're not enough? Amara nodded, but fresh tears fell. I just miss them, David. I miss my family. I miss feeling like I belong somewhere. You belong here, David said fiercely. With me. In this studio. Creating something that matters. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning that went beyond art, beyond their professional arrangement. I want to paint you now, David said quietly. Like this. With tears on your face and pain in your eyes and all the messy, complicated emotions you're feeling. Will you let me? Amara nodded, unable to speak. She moved to the platform without being asked, letting her clothes fall away with none of the careful ritual that usually accompanied it. There was no robe this time. No gentle transition. Just raw vulnerability. David positioned himself at his canvas, but his hands trembled as he picked up his brush. This was different from sketching. This was permanent. This was the real work that would hang in the festival. Don't pose, he said. Just feel. Whatever you're feeling right now, let it show. So Amara did. She let herself feel all of it. The shame, the anger, the hurt, the loneliness. She let herself miss her family and mourn the easy relationship they'd once had. She let herself feel the weight of judgment from a society that would never understand what she and David had created together. And as she stood there, tears flowing freely, her body trembling with the force of her emotions, David painted. He painted for 3 hours straight, barely speaking, barely breathing, capturing every nuance of her grief and rage and desperate hope. And somewhere in the middle of it, Amara felt something shift. She wasn't just being observed. She was being witnessed. Truly seen in all her complicated, contradictory humanity. When David finally stepped back from the canvas, his face was wet with tears too. Come see, he said hoarsely. Amara wrapped a robe around herself and walked to the canvas on shaking legs. What she saw took her breath away. The woman in the painting was devastation and strength incarnate. Tears streaked her face, but her posture was defiant. Her eyes held pain, but also fire. She looked like someone who had been broken and was in the process of putting herself back together. Not perfectly, not prettily, but with fierce determination. She looked like a warrior, a survivor, a woman who refused to be ashamed of her own humanity. David, Amara breathed. This is you, he said. This is the truth beneath everything else. And this is why what we're doing matters. Amara turned to him, and the look in his eyes made her heart stop. It wasn't just artistic appreciation anymore. It wasn't just friendship or respect. It was love. Raw, terrifying, all-consuming love. David, she started, but he was already moving toward her. This time, there was no hesitation. No internal struggle. No careful consideration of boundaries and professionalism. He kissed her like a man drowning, and she kissed him back like oxygen. His hands were in her hair, on her face, mapping her body with a reverence that had nothing to do with art and everything to do with worship. The robe fell away, forgotten, as they stumbled backward toward the couch. Amara, David breathed against her neck. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is too much, too fast, tell me. Don't stop, she gasped, pulling him closer. Please don't stop. I need to feel something good. I need to feel wanted. You are wanted, David said fiercely, pulling back to look at her. God, Amara, you're so wanted it terrifies me. I want you so much I can barely think straight. I dream about you. I paint you even when you're not here. You've consumed me. What happened next was a blur of sensation and emotion. David's hands on her skin, learning her body not as an artist but as a lover. His mouth tracing patterns of fire across her collarbones, her breasts, her stomach. The sound of her own voice crying out, finally free from the careful control she always maintained. They made love on the floor of his studio, surrounded by paintings of her, bathed in the late afternoon light that poured through the windows. It was messy and imperfect and utterly real, the opposite of the careful, controlled poses she'd held for weeks. David moved inside her with a rhythm that felt like coming home, and Amara wrapped herself around him, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. When she came apart in his arms, she cried, not from sadness this time, but from relief. From the overwhelming feeling of being completely known and still completely accepted. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both trembling, both struggling to catch their breath. That was, David started. Everything, Amara finished. That was everything. He pulled her closer, pressing kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I love you, he said. I know it's too soon. I know it complicates everything. But I love you, Amara. And I need you to know that this, he gestured vaguely at their entwined bodies. This isn't just passion or desire or the intensity of the work. This is real. You're real to me. I love you too, Amara said, the words coming easier than she expected. I've been in love with you for weeks. Maybe from that first day in the cafe when you talked about creating something true. I just didn't let myself believe it could be real. It's real, David assured her. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. They stayed like that as the light faded and Lagos settled into its evening rhythm around them. And for the first time in months, Amara felt at peace. Not because her problems had disappeared. She's still scared of her family finding out. Society would probably still judge her. The world would still try to make her feel ashamed. But she had this. She had him. She had someone who saw all of her. The broken pieces, the scared parts, the messy emotions, and loved her anyway. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. It happened on a Monday morning. Amara was at work, halfway through reviewing a marketing campaign, when her phone started buzzing. One notification, then 10, then 50. Her stomach dropped before she even looked at the screen. The first message was from a former university classmate. Amara, is this you? Attached was a link to Lagos's most notorious gossip blog. And there, on the homepage, was a photograph. Blurry. Taken from a distance through a window. But unmistakably her. Standing nude on David's platform while he worked at his easel. The caption read, exclusive. Struggling Lekki artist pays desperate woman to pose nude. Art or exploitation? Amara's vision went dark around the edges. She couldn't breathe. The office walls seemed to close in. Amara, her colleague Blessing, was standing over her desk. Are you okay? You look. But Amara was already running. Grabbing her bag, ignoring her boss calling after her, ignoring the curious stares. She made it outside before she called David. He answered on the first ring. Amara, I've been trying to call you. You've seen it? Yes. I don't know who took the photo or how they got close enough. It doesn't matter how. Amara was shouting now, standing on the Lagos street as traffic roared past. It's out there. My face is out there. Everyone knows. Your face isn't completely clear in the photo. Most people won't be able to identify. My mother will be able to identify me, David. My father. My boss. Everyone I know. Her voice broke. I'm finished. My life is over. Don't say that. We'll figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. I'm the desperate woman who degraded herself for money. That's how the world sees me now. That's how everyone will see me. Amara, please. Where are you? Let me come get you. No. Amara wiped her eyes roughly. I need space. I need to think. Don't shut me out. Please don't. But Amara was already hanging up, already hailing a taxi, already running from the scandal that was about to consume her entire life.